Is that $25 million figure new? Did somebody come out with that today?
I think it was yesterday. Someone said that Tom Condon asked basically that was the number, $25 million.
Okay, I thought you were referring to the franchise tag. Yeah. So,
oh, okay.
So if they're looking for if they're looking for $25 million per year, forget it. I mean, they're not going to get that from anyone. Tom Condon can ask for whatever he wants. They're not going to get $25 million a year. That's ridiculous. There's no. The highest paid quarterbacks in the league aren't getting that. And, by my view, and I think by any objective view, Sam Bradford's an average starting quarterback in the NFL. So there's no way he's getting that. The franchise tag is around $20 million. So, worst case, the Eagles have to, if they wanted to keep him, they could just keep him at $20 million for 1 year and have another show me year. I don't think that's the way to go. Personally, you mentioned the Chase Daniel avenue with, bring him in and sort of use him as a bridge, maybe with a little bit of upside to, and then, on the side you have a quarterback that you take in the draft and you let him develop, the same way that they did with Peterson and McNabb back in the day. And I think you can tag Sam Bradford and try to tag and trade him. I do think he has trade value. What you do in that scenario is you tag him and you tell Condon, go ahead out and see if you can work out a deal with another team. You work out compensation for a trade, and then you get something in return for him instead of just letting him walk.
Yeah. What did you I'm reading your piece over at Philly Voice the other day, and it sounded to me like you felt that they were a little lukewarm on him, including Peterson. And it sounded to me like, Peterson was almost at one point talking as if he thought Bradford was almost in the system. He's going to be a really good fit, and, he's a top-notch guy. It sounded like Peterson, to me anyway, maybe you differently, kind of had his heart set on having a guy like Bradford back, but understands that, hey, it's not my decision, whatever they want to do monetarily.
I didn't see it that way. And after having written it, I realized I'm in the minority on that. I think a lot of the other reporters kind of saw it your way as well. But for me, the first thing that he said was, we're still evaluating that.
Yes.
And he never committed to him at any point. I think, if you have an obvious, this guy is coming back situation, then I think, they're not going to dance around that question. They're going to say, sure, we want him back. But no time did he ever say, we definitively want him back. He did make the comment that, I think he'd fit into a system that I'd bring here, and he's a good quarterback, and blah, blah, blah. But really, he made no definitive statement whatsoever that they want him back. And, failing that, I don't really see any kind of commitment to him whatsoever. And again, you mentioned the money and what they are as a franchise, and I just don't. I think that the first thing that they really need to recognize heading into this offseason is where they are. And where they are right now is not a Super Bowl contender. They're not going to be a Super Bowl contender in 2016 with Sam Bradford or without him. So you're going to pay a guy, $20+ million in 2016 and possibly beyond for again, noting that I think he's kind of an average quarterback. There's no way. I think you kind of got to go the route of the draft and develop a guy.
Yeah, the one comment that he said that made me feel that way, that I think above all the rest, was he says, I think Sam, he's got all the tools. There's no question. There's no denying that. Got good size, arm, mind for the game. It's just a matter of plugging him in, cutting him loose, and utilizing those strengths in this system. That comment there was kind of like, it almost sounded like he was hopeful that, but I guess my question to that would be, though, does Laurie view Bradford as Kelly's guy, and his disdain for Kelly is, I'm cutting all ties with that guy?
And that's a good point, too. Control is Peterson even going to have in terms of, that decision? I mean, certainly if he wants Bradford as his quarterback, then he'll have some kind of influence. But I think, him just coming in, you got to understand, too, he's coming into this press conference, 2-3 days after his last game with the Chiefs. So he's almost kind of unwinding from a really long season in which, his former team made the playoffs, and now he's in here and has no time whatsoever to really watch the tape of the Eagles, and he gets in there and, I think he's just kind of going off the top of his head, and his, thoughts aren't fully formed there. So I really think almost kind of anything he says about personnel is almost kind of a throwaway because he's going to have more time to evaluate that and watch the tape and make his own evaluation.
Jimmy Kempski's with us. Jimmy, then let me ask you, because I think the Schwartz hire, I liken it to, Reed with Johnson, where Reed was an unknown. Johnson kind of became, to the fans anyway, I think Johnson was the star to the fans. It was a defensive-minded team. Schwartz is kind of now the higher profile guy. And, he said we want to attack. You wrote about big numbers. Does that make Vinny Curry almost the number one priority then this offseason for them?
Yeah, well, in terms of bringing back their own guys, I think so. And Curry's really talented pass rusher. In my opinion, he's their best edge rusher. I think he's had the most success with the amount of playing time that he's had in this Eagles defense. And I thought even with the 3-4 scheme that didn't quite fit him, I thought he wasn't on the field as much as he should have been. I think there were times where there were, either obvious passing downs or likely passing downs where he should have been on the field where he often wasn't. In a 4-3, he'll get more time on the playing field, possibly as a starter. Who knows, exactly how he'll be utilized. You can use him on the outside. You can use him on the inside, get good matchups against opposing guards who can't deal with his quickness. And, I think certainly if you're going to move to a 4-3, and especially the way that Jim Schwartz likes to attack opposing offensive lines, he's a guy that really makes all the sense in the world to make a big effort to get back in here.
Yeah, and Jimmy, you pointed out in the article, and he might have said it as well, but you transcribed his quotes about the guys who have played the Fletcher Cox position that he has had before. And when you read some of the names and know the seasons they had while they were there and then someplace else, you should be, and I love the picture, by the way, with the very few times you look at the picture and then the little caption under the picture and say, that's hilarious. Jim Schwartz is my coach in a contract year. Yay. And it's Fletcher Cox dancing around the field. You should be real excited for him if you are Fletcher Cox fan.
Yeah, and look at what some of his defensive tackles have made after they've played with him. You look at Albert Haynesworth. He got that absurd deal with the Redskins after playing under Schwartz. You look at Ndamukong Suh, who broke the bank with the Dolphins after playing under Schwartz. You look at Marcel Darius, who got a huge contract with the Bills, although I think he got that before. I have to check the time frame on when he actually got that. But those three guys had their best years under Jim Schwartz after they moved on to other teams. They sort of took a little bit of a dip in productivity, and that goes across the board with his defensive ends and his defensive tackles. They all had their and there's a ton of them. I mean, there's a lot of good edge rushers there too, like Mario Williams and Jerry Hughes with the Bills, and then with the Lions he had guys like Cliff Averill, and then with the Titans he had a guy like Javon Kearse. We saw kind of his productivity drop off a little bit when he came to the Eagles from Tennessee. So he had a lot of guys that played really well under him, but for some reason whenever they went to a new team their productivity fell off. So I do think you're going to see a little bit of a bump in productivity in terms of the Eagles' success getting to the quarterback. Last year they faced the fifth most pass attempts in the NFL, and they only had the 17th most sacks. So that productivity, especially with the talent that they have on that defensive line, really has nowhere to go but up.
Yeah, exciting stuff there. I've been asking for the 4-3 for a couple of years. Do you think that they have better 4-3 personnel? And some of the guys that I'm interested to get your take on, Jimmy, are, Graham, Barwin, and even to a lesser extent, Marcus Smith, who is probably doing backflips at Chip Kelly's out the door as well.
Well, Graham will be a 4-3 DE, and that's where they drafted him to be when he came out of Michigan. And actually, Schwartz talked about Graham. Schwartz coached Graham for the week of Senior Bowl back in 2010, and Graham actually wound up being the MVP of the Senior Bowl game. He was a beast in that game. Like, he basically lived in the backfield in that game, and that game and that week of practices made him a lot of money. But yeah, so he'll be defensive end, and then Barwin, I originally thought that he might be a better fit as like a Sam linebacker. He's a really athletic guy. I mean, we think of him as an edge rusher, but I think that's a position that he could play. But I saw somewhere where they think that he's probably going to be a defensive end in his system, so that's where we're kind of staying there. And you mentioned Marcus Smith. I don't know. I mean, certainly I think he stands to benefit from Chip Kelly being out the door, but I don't think he benefits on the switch from a 3-4 to a 4-3, because I really do think he's more of a natural 3-4 outside linebacker in that jack role that Connor Barwin kind of played. I don't really see him as being able to hold point of attack on as a defensive end in the 4-3. maybe he's a guy that can kind of transition to that 4-3 Sam linebacker spot.
Okay, well then Kiko, he had won the Rookie of the Year inside, and then Schwartz was going to move him to the weak side. You would anticipate that's where he'll go. Where does that leave Hicks and Kendricks then? Kendricks has got an extension, so you would assume either he's a trade bait candidate or he's going to have to change positions again.
Yeah, I see Kendricks kind of in that same spot that weak side line, that the will position. I see Hicks as the Mike. Maybe if they bring D'Amico Ryans back, he can play that spot as well. And then at the Sam spot, I don't think that Marcus Smith is anything close to a starter at this point, playing a new position like that. Maybe you can make an argument for either Kiko or Kendricks play either side of either outside linebacker spot in that 4-3. But there aren't going to be any perfect fits when you move from one scheme to another. But I do think Hicks will be the guy in the middle, and I actually think that Kendricks will be the top guy at that will spot.
Interesting there. What about Rowe? Do you see enough from him as a corner to think that that's where he'll be, or do you think a new staff might view him as a safety, especially with Thurman possibly out the door?
I think he's a corner. I think they drafted him to be a corner. They want him to be a corner. And the corner spot is a more valuable spot than safety. Even though you look around the league and there really aren't that many good safeties, I thought what he showed at the end of the season. I mean, he got lit up a little bit by Calvin Johnson, and you stick any rookie on an island, man to man with no safety help with Calvin Johnson, pretty good chance they're going to have a welcome to the NFL type moment. And he did to a certain degree. I thought it was actually a little bit overblown how badly he played in that game. I don't think it was as bad as it was made out to be.
Yeah.
Calvin Johnson made some catches on him where he was kind of in his hip pocket. So, but as the season progressed, I thought he played really well. And not only that, the technique that he showed under Corey Ullman, I think Corey Ullman's done a good job both with him, and I thought really Nolan Carroll progressed big time under Corey Ullman. Carroll's going to be gone because there's no spot for him there. Maxwell's going to start on one spot. I think Rowe's going to start on the other. But I thought that the way he was able to teach technique, I thought there's a big difference in their level of play in 2015 as opposed to 2014. With Ullman's first year with the Eagles being 2015. So I think they keep that continuity of the same level, the same type of coaching. I think you give Rowe another year there to show that he can improve at that cornerback position. Again, I thought the returns that you got on him late in the season were very good and certainly encouraging for the future.
I liked Rowe a lot. Yeah, I agree with you that it'll be interesting to see what they do with him, but I do think that he played pretty well. And I agree with you about the Detroit thing as well. Jimmy Kempski, PhillyVoice.com, covers the Eagles. When you flip over to some offense, they hired Frank Reich the other day. Now, Peterson's going to call plays. I thought it was interesting, though. You got Reich, an offensive coordinator, and then DeFilippo, another guy who called plays, and Peterson, a guy who's not really called plays. But Peterson mentioned the way they streamline things in Kansas City. So it seems like a possibility where, Peterson can focus on the run game. Reich, the San Diego teams were pretty good at throwing the ball. So it seems like they are really stressed getting some people in here. But to me, it looks like they stressed getting people in here to work with quarterbacks because all those guys all have a quarterback background. So do you like the staff that Peterson has put together around him?
I think it's a good idea to have as many guys in there as you can that can help a quarterback out. You look at what the Eagles have been, 9, which was Donovan McNabb. I mean, they go to 2016 with another new starting quarterback. It'll be their sixth since 2009, when Donovan McNabb last year in Philadelphia. So they've just had incredible instability at the quarterback position since the Donovan McNabb. So that's a position where I think that they really will. They just want to really get that fixed and tie that down for the future. I think that the tea leaves kind of say that they're going to draft a guy and try to develop and groom him. And you have, like you mentioned, you have a guy in Doug Peterson who was not only a quarterback coach at one time in his career, but was a backup quarterback in the NFL for a long time. Same thing with Frank Reich. He's a offensive coordinator, was with the Chargers, was a quarterback coach before that, played in the NFL as well. And then you have DeFilippo, who, again, a quarterback coach who became an offensive coordinator for the Browns. He worked with 4 different very young quarterbacks. Now, the list of names I'll give you here really aren't the best names, but he worked with Jamarcus Russell when he was like 22, 23 years old. Got the only non-awful season of Russell's career out of him. He worked with Johnny Manziel. Manziel had some nice moments on the field, actually, last year, Although, the off-the-field stuff is what eventually is going to really do him in. He worked with Mark Sanchez for a short amount of time in New York, and then he worked with Derek Carr his rookie season. Derek Carr had a really good rookie season in his first year in the league here. So, a lot of young quarterbacks is what he worked with there. Again, some success. But again, those names really aren't all that flashy or aren't all that appealing, I guess. But but he does have that experience working with young guys. So it is interesting to note that they've all had a lot of experience coaching quarterbacks.
That too, and one thing I noticed with the teams, DeFilippo especially this year, the tight end has been a big part of their offense. That kid out in Cleveland this year had a monster year. So maybe they're focusing on getting Zach Ertz more involved in the pass game. Jimmy Kempski, everybody here. It's PhillyVoice.com, of course, in a busy Eagles week as the next step of the Eagles era has begun under Doug Peterson. Thank you, Jimmy.
You got it, Mike. Appreciate it.